So that articulation of identity is critical, because once you've done the work to put it into two sentences, like you don't just sit there and go, what is it? Oh, bang, I got it, it's that. It's like, you got to do the work, right? Like, it's like writing anything. You don't just like sit down and write an amazing song or write an amazing article or write an amazing book. You got to put the real effort and diligence into getting everything out and then refining it right back.
Hi everyone, it's Dani Valent here with you, and we are in the Dirty Linen studio, chat room, hangout space. Maybe you're on a walk, maybe you're in the kitchen, maybe you're driving, maybe you're on a train. In fact, let me know where you're listening to this podcast. I would love to know where I find you. Are you with a dog? Are you with a book full of knives? Are you with a bunch of people? What are you doing? I've heard people talk about listening to Dirty Linen while they're doing kitchen prep, and I just love that image. But yeah, I'm sure you could be doing all kinds of things, so let me know. I do love to hear from you, my honoured listeners. I certainly do value your time. There are so many things you could be listening to and doing with your time that I'm really grateful for every moment you spend with me. And I certainly do love bringing you food chats from interesting people in all kinds of places and spaces. I especially do love welcoming people back to the podcast. A return guest is only invited back because we loved them the first time round and they've got really interesting things to say. And I would say Leon Kennedy is definitely in that space. I remember when I spoke to Leon on the pod last year, I was actually in Barcelona, lucky to be having a little Euro trip. And I remember exactly where I was sitting, looking out onto a balcony, and I can see the churches and the rooftops that were in my vision as we were chatting, and Leon dropped so many truth bombs. It's one of my favourite pods. So Leon, then you were with Mulberry and now you are Pax. Welcome back to Dirty Linen.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. It's always great to chat with you, Dani.
Well, likewise. I really love your perspective and your energy, and I know you're always thinking and not afraid of change. So what a good combo. Bring us up. Well, yeah, bring us up to date, Leon. Tell me about PAX and why we need it, and about the transition.
Yeah, I mean, the transition's good because it kind of also gives you a sense of like my world right now too, which is always nice. But I mean, it's been amazing, like I think the reality, obviously, last time I was on, I was at the Mulberry Group and I guess have spent the last sort of 3 years there on just the most, amazing chapter of my career. I guess like I have obviously departed now to focus on PAX, but the truth is the Mulberry Group will never truly be rid of me. I think I mean, Nathan is such a great friend and mentor, and, we couldn't be doing anything we're doing at PAX without, the support that he initially gave us. And I think ultimately Nathan and I, we just wanted to get in front of it, like when PAX was born sort of back in January, we implemented a plan back then, to kind of go, hey, we kind of reckon things are going to go pretty well here. So, let's make sure that when the time's right, I'm able to sort of step away really smoothly and pass the reins on to the next CEO. And that's been awesome. Like, I think I'm really glad. I think we did a really good job of planning ahead on that one, because the transition probably happened sooner than we thought. I don't think either of us thought, PAX would gather traction as quickly as it did. But, you got to get so the next CEO at Mulberry Group, Selena Plesser, you got to get her on, Dani. She's amazing. Like, I feel like in the 3 years I was there, I feel like it was all career defining achievement, and she'll probably top it all in the next 12 months, so it's been, that's enabled me to, and she's probably going to kill me for making that nomination as well. But
we love a dob in. So for people who don't know some of the names that we're throwing around, Mulberry Group is a Melbourne-based hospitality group that was founded by Nathan Tolman, also a previous guest on Dirty Linen, and someone whose career I've had the pleasure of following over about 15 years. Started with one small cafe, now got 7 or 8 city-defining venues venues and the ones that he's handed over to the next custodians have certainly been important places for Melbourne's cafe culture especially. And Pax is PAX. It's a new company that Leon has started with another previous Dirty Linen guest, Michael Bashetta, hospo guy from way back. And so that's kind of, I guess, the basis of this conversation. So you've left a hospitality group to start Pax, and Pax is what?
Yeah, okay, cool. So Pax is essentially a hospitality consultancy. And I know most people hear that and just yawn, but I think the best way to explain it is a little bit existential. So for us, it's about trying to help people with their businesses so that they can enjoy their lives more, right? Like that's really at the heart of what we're trying to do. And that's probably the piece or the hinge that really connected myself and Michael as well. Like early on, just as friends and collaborators and whatnot, we both kind of always were doing that, like we've always had full-time jobs and we've always had pretty full plates, self-proclaimed workaholics and whatnot, but we'd always have the time, we'd always find the time, to be able to have conversations with people that asked for help. And I think the thing for us was that's what always, drove why we'd have those conversations and work really hard to do that, because you could see how, you help people with their business, they really get to enjoy their lives more. And that's what I personally believe business should always be about. So outside of that, I think also circumstantially, it's pretty common knowledge, speaking more to like why, we need it. It's pretty common knowledge these days that, the last 5 years of hospitality have been the worst times in recent history, right? Like that's anecdotal. You can, look it up and find it pretty tracks well with all the sort of market reports and whatnot. But I feel like you could just walk down the street and within 100 meters, you'll find, 3 or 4 people that will attest to that as well. And I think it's just, it's never been harder to survive really. Like when the market gets this tough, unfortunately, things like insolvency don't discriminate, and it doesn't matter how good your brand is or how great your reputation is or how great your product is. If you don't have your house in order, you find it very hard to survive. And I think now more than ever, people just need a blueprint for how to navigate these times. So we've at Pax, right, we put together a pretty amazing team of people, right? Like we've got over 100 years of collective experience in hospitality and business, and each of the founding team members are like highly specialized in their respective fields. So that just means when we work with our clients, wherever they may have gaps, they're going to be working with the best people in the industry to solve for those specific things. And last thing I'll say on that is I also just add that like while the current market conditions amplify a need for these services, I think even if we were in a different part of the cycle, they'd still be equally valuable, because effectively what we're doing is we're working with businesses to assist them in developing strategy, right? That's the product. And the strategy doesn't always have to just be get the house in order, right? Sometimes people have already achieved that, or sometimes you work with people in that capacity and then, you do what you say you're going to do and you get them out of that situation. And then it all becomes about now what, like what's the future look like? And I think, for a lot of crew, like that whole prospect of like, how do we focus on growth is another very known pain point, for a lot of people. So yeah, I think for us, it's just all about, helping people with all the phases of scale really.
What I love about it is that it's taking existing businesses because, even in a difficult climate, new places are opening up all the time, and that's great. Like I love the optimism that's put into that. But so often it's so resource heavy at the beginning and then things kind of tail off. People don't know they might know how to open and they have that buzz of the initial months. But then I think to hit 1 year, 2 year, 5 years, like there are so many businesses that fall over then. And so much is lost then, it's not only financial, it's the energy, it's the ideas, it's the team building. So I love the fact that you're sort of getting into businesses for the most part that are up and running already and just want to know how to shape up and push on.
Yeah, and we do both for sure. Like in an ideal world, we'd be working with someone from the point of conception, because that way we can ensure they've got the right go-to-market strategy so that when they launch, they've already got the house in order. But often, as is the case, like you just mentioned, people aren't thinking about that stuff. And in hospitality, we don't have access to those tools just readily available, So it just means that, when you're jumping in at stage 5 or 6 or 10, sometimes you got to retrofit some of that stuff, and that's okay too, right? That's just every industry, not just hospitality.
So when you say, Leon, get the house in order, what are we talking about?
So I think like if we look at, some of the main things that we're encountering right now, and you sort of see like, what are they, right? Like what's the spread? It's a really good way to snapshot it, I think, because there's very common pain points like across the industry, right? And we've already worked with a pretty diverse spread of clients and projects. And even if I cast the net beyond PAX's inception into just all the previous consulting I've ever done, it's really easy to see the patterns, right? So, there's always, of course, there's the usual suspects, right? Like the food's great, but the books are a mess, or, no one knows what their cash flow runway is, or, the leadership team's running on fumes, or whatever. Like, there's all that usual stuff. It's nothing really novel, but to me, it just comes back to how effectively are you managing the most foundational areas of your business, which are strategy, marketing, finance, people culture, product, and operations, right? Like they're the ones. And there's really not much that can happen in a business that isn't well represented in those areas, right? So it's really all about reviewing those categories and diagnosing, right? Where are the strengths, the weaknesses, the risks and whatnot? And so how we do that, right, is we do it through an audit, okay? So basically that is a non-negotiable critical process that enables us to add the most amount of value, because by auditing these areas, right, we can see straight away what's actually going on in the business, right? Where are the issues? Where are the opportunities? And it's actually really hard for a founder or for a senior manager to get that depth and breadth of information given their, job title or placement on the org chart. So it's really, really important to be able to do that diagnosis, because another thing I can tell you, from like strategy 101, strategy is about design and then it's about execution. And just because you design it really well doesn't mean it's going to be implemented really well. It's all about understanding that, like, if you really want to design a strategy that's going to give you the best strike rate of execution, what's going to really make the most difference is how well did you capture all the information, because you have to effectively make the most informed decision. So if you want to get the best quality of information, you have to speak to everyone. You know what I mean? Like that's the truth, right? If you get out there and you can really go and, run personalized interviews with key stakeholders and and survey, the organization, you can take all of this information and produce a really, really clear report with really, really clear recommendations around, hey, this is what's going on and this is what you should do. But the best outcome that will come from that report is actually a roadmap, right? It's just a really clear set of actionable things, right? That everyone can galvanize around. And why that actually is so potent is because if you do it in that way, what will feature on that roadmap is just all the things that people spoke to in their interviews, right? And that's a really big deal when it comes to capturing buy-in for that implementation stage.
I guess, a lot of reports get written and put into a lot of drawers. And I hear what you're saying, like if everyone's contributed to the report, there's going to be more buy-in. But what about the next stage? Like, do you stick around for the implementation?
Totally, yeah. I mean, we kind of leave it, we don't have like a hard and fast policy, because what it's like, right? Like business is business, but every hospitality business is so unique. And they've all got different requirements. So what we'll do is go, hey, here's the report, here's the roadmap and everything. And now that we can see exactly what's going on, here's a suggestion on how we could remain involved and assist. Sometimes, I'll make sure that report is fully self-contained. So, even if they never see me again, at least they've got like the, IKEA instruction manual, and it's like, cool, I've got everything I need to just go and do it. But invariably, there's always going to be ways that we can help with progress and achieving stuff a bit faster. So usually we'll structure a bit of a proposal around, hey, if you want us to, hang around and help you with all this stuff and varying degrees of capacity, then here's what that might look like for you. And yeah, so far everyone's been like, yeah, please stay. Like, that would be great.
I'm sort of hearing whispers, on my shoulder where people are saying, this sounds amazing, I would love this, but I won't be able to afford it. What sort of businesses is this for?
Look, it's for everyone, right? Like, it's actually quite funny because, when we first started it, it was like the scale of it was pretty big. Like, we were talking to, big like restaurant groups and that and all that sort of thing, and we were like, okay, well, that works pretty well because we put these 6 people together that are all highly specialized in the industry. It's going to cost a bit of money, to have those people, and that's why you don't see C-suites like this normally, because for one organization to hire, like, I mean, it's going to kill your payroll, and it's like, okay, well, if we can put that together and people can just, outsource to that standard of expertise, it's probably we're probably solving a pretty good problem here. But originally it was like really bigger scale things. And we were like, well, that's awesome. And we want to be able to help everyone. But then when you're talking about someone who's on the other end of the scale, and it's like, hey, it's just a founder-led organization that's maybe one restaurant or something, it was hard to figure out a way to be able to assist there. And since we sort of went, hey, let's just start with the audit, forget about everything else, right? You don't need this silver bullet menu that like speaks to everybody or segments your market. It's like, you know what? We just want to be able to help people. We know categorically that this audit process is the thing, right? That changes the whole perspective. Doesn't matter how, you might be in an amazing position and you're just stressed about growth. You might be in a really bad position and you're stressed about survival. That audit's going to help, right? So then the second component is like, okay, great. Now, how do we make this work cost effectively to be able to provide the right support? And what we've been able to find now is by just uniquely tailoring the package to the person, we're able to actually be involved, and we're able to sort of make sure that we are adding value within whatever the budget constraints are, because obviously by the end of the audit, we know exactly, probably sometimes even better than the people in the business, right? What is the financial position? I think for me and Michael, the problem is figuring out if we can do this viably, because our tendency is to just always donate time without thinking about it. But so far it's working really, really well.
You mentioned, restaurants are all unique, which is why we love them. And I suppose it's the ones that are unique that you fall in love with the hardest. I mean, that's speaking personally. But are there types of restaurants or models that are more or less likely to succeed?
So, I've got a really strong opinion on this, right? And my opinion is no, right? I don't think there's a difference. And I've spoken to this like heaps of times before. Like, people ask me this all the time, and my answer doesn't change, right? My view is that, again, without having done any proper research, it's just purely an opinion, is think about it if you did some data science on this, right? So say if you categorize the industry by business type, whatever you pick, right? Like cafe, small, medium, large, restaurant, small, medium, large, pub, QSR, whatever the categories are, and you take all the businesses in the market and you put them in their relevant categories, then if you look at each category and you assess the revenue and the profit of each of those businesses, right? If you then plotted all of that on a graph per category, the distributions are going to look the same, I reckon, right? Like, I think this is going to be true in any particular cycle of the market, good or bad, right? There's just going to be this very even spread, right? There's going to be businesses doing well, there's going to be businesses not doing well, and then everyone in the middle. Doesn't really matter what the category is. I think, sure, maybe from category to category, there might be some operating at maybe these guys are vibrating at a slightly higher frequency on the graph, but it's all going to come with trade-offs, right? So I don't actually think that you can differentiate it that way. I think the better thing to consider in this question is that if you did take those categories, right, and you take all the businesses that are better performing, so let's just say you take the ones that are at least 1 or 2 standard deviations above the mean, okay, and you take them from each category and you create a new category, right? Like, call them the unicorns or something, right? And I think it would be really revealing and valuable to try to identify the commonalities in the operating processes that those businesses share, because I think that's going to give you a really great blueprint for success, how to kind of like, what are the foundations that need to be attended to? And even if you didn't apply that level of statistical analysis, right, like, that blueprint exists, right? So, the thing that we stick to at PAX, I've been using this my whole career, is that you have to understand the 4 key foundations of a business that enables you to have repeat trade, right? That's the key outcome, which is effectively brand equity, right? So they're your key metrics. And those four areas, those four foundations are really, really clear, right? It's identity, product, consistency, promo, in that order. Think of it like a pyramid, right? You think about a pyramid in four quadrants or whatever, four lines. The foundational one is identity, then it's product, consistency, promo. And like I said, it has to be done in that order, right? And we could literally do an entire podcast just on this model, but I'll just give you the quick snapshot, right? So if you think of it this way from an identity perspective, if you and your staff can't articulate the identity of your venue in like 2 sentences, it's going to be really hard for your customers to understand and engage with your business versus all your competitors, right? You might kind of end up being a bit homogenized. So if your identity isn't clear, then it's also really hard to qualify your product mix, right? Like, how do I know if I'm cooking the right stuff or providing the right type of service at the right times? And then obviously your consistency is going to become really hard to measure, right? So if you have gaps in those bottom order categories and you go straight to marketing and promo, which so many people do, right? All you are doing is advertising a confusing and inconsistent experience, right? So obviously that's going to create a massive barrier to repeat trade, let alone building that critical mass of like, you know, evangelical customers or whatever you want to call it. And I think just so many people end up burning cash on marketing and promo before you get to those bottom order needs and just get them in check. And then they wonder, why isn't this moving the needle, or at least keeping the needle moved if it did at all in the first place? So yeah, I think coming back to your original question, right? Like, is there a model that works better? Well, I mean, yeah, I guess there is, right? I've actually, maybe I'm changing my own mind as I speak out loud. Maybe the model that works best is the one I just explained. It's identity, product, consistency, promo, because I guarantee you all the unicorns, they're all over that stuff.
I love it. As you're talking, I've got in mind a place I went to yesterday in Clayton South in Melbourne called Tiffin Box. And it's an Indian burger joint, and it's run by this beautiful queen from Calcutta, Muni. And I think I feel like the identity is there because she's making like butter chicken burgers. She does a really nice goat biryani. She does cutty rolls, which is like the sort of paratha wraps from Calcutta style, but she does it a bit Melbourne-y because she's got a bit more salad in it, so it builds it out like a souvlaki. But she's doing all that stuff. But she's also just doing like Aussie burgers, and it's called Tiffin Box, and it's just a bit confused because people don't know what a tiffin is, and the tradies are there just getting a beef burger, but wouldn't it be great if they just got the butter chicken burger and she could narrow the menu down?
So that articulation of identity is critical, because once you've done the work to put it into 2 sentences, like you don't just sit there and go, what is it? Oh, bang, I got it. It's that. It's like, you got to do the work, right? Like, it's like writing anything. You don't just like sit down and write an amazing song or write an amazing article or write an amazing book. You got to put the real effort and diligence into getting everything out and then refining it right back. But once you get that statement, it needs to be clear, and it also needs to be compelling. You know, I think sometimes I've worked with clients where, you know, they might say, yeah, from an identity perspective, that's what it is, and you randomly pick 10 people in the organization and they can all recite it. But it's just something like, you know, our mission is to provide high level quality of hospitality. It's like, yeah, no shit, right? Like, that's just transactional. Everyone's doing that, you know, whereas so if it's clear and it's also compelling, then now you're ready to move on to the next stage, right? Because then when you look at the product mix, that's just going to be straight up, right? Like in that example that you mentioned, if that authenticity, that identity, that it's all there, then the next question is, should we put on an Australian type of burger for the tradies down the road? It's like, no. like, you know, maybe in that instance, there might be a different, without knowing the identity, you can't really say, right? But
yeah, sure. Yeah.
Everything becomes measurable now against it. And I find, I'm in the same boat as you. I think exactly the same way. Like often I'll go somewhere and I go, you know, I'm feeling the identity here. Like I've got the vibe, but they clearly haven't written it down, because why the hell have they got that on the menu? You know, why the hell is that up on the wall or something, you know? So it's, once you look at it through that lens, things become really easy to spot.
So I get that you're helping businesses and it's, I love the mission of people being able to enjoy their lives more. But what about like a vision of what the industry looks like, Leon? Like what would you like hospitality? How would you like the industry to change? How would you like to shape it?
Oh, that is a great question. I mean, to be honest, I don't know if this is a controversial statement or not. It's definitely, I'm going out on a limb here, but I feel like it's already changing the way I would want it to change. And what I mean by that is when you actually look at what's happening right now in most industries, there's a real changing of the guard in terms of how business is done. Okay, like we have never been more socially aware. We've never been more conscious. We've never been more altruistic in our thinking. And don't get me wrong, we are nowhere near where we need to be. Right, I get that, and I'm a huge campaigner. I'm actively out there every day trying to drive it to that place. But it's if you think about where we are and where we've come from in just a matter of like 10 years, it's wild, right? And even in hospitality, right, you look at kitchens and how they used to run compared to how they run now, and you're seeing it everywhere. You see it in sport. You look at if you know anyone that plays AFL, they'll tell you that like back in the day if the coach wanted you to perform, they just scream at you. Now that doesn't work anymore, right? So these things are starting to shift, and I think a lot of people they meet change and they meet uncertainty with fear and anxiety, and it's kind of like, oh, you go back to the good old days, and like, oh well, the next generation is this and it's that, and it's like, yeah, I mean, sort of, but not really. Like if if you actually look at what is actually going on and you look at the really key metrics, you'll see that there's some really, really compelling stats that show that we're heading in the right direction. And again, without going into too much of a rabbit hole, which I probably have already, I just think that, like, to me, everything about business is really, it comes back to altruism, right? And it comes back to going, and I think every road leads there, right? Like, pick a religion, right? That's where it's going to end. And to me, where I arrived at that conclusion wasn't through anything philosophically, believe it or not. It was through looking at economics, right? And when you study economics, that's the same pathway, right? Like everything comes back to that. Like those principles about, how to measure GDP and how to run GDP, it's really proven in math, right? That like that is the outcome. It's not about competition. It's about collaboration and cooperation. And and I think I actually look at that and I think, yeah, what, times are tough right now, absolutely. But if you zoom out and you look at some of those things and you think about where we're at, I actually think we are moving in that direction at a rate of knots. It's just we're coming from so far back, so it might not seem like we're making the right amount of progress.
Okay. I mean, I don't know where capitalism and altruism converge. I can definitely hear what you're saying about collaboration. And I talk to a lot of business owners these days that are almost surprising themselves the way they're thinking about supporting the businesses around them, and perhaps supporting staff into other businesses and onto other pathways. But where do you see, tell me more about this altruism idea as it relates to hospitality.
It's okay. So it's going to be very hard. I'd love to have a whiteboard.
I know you love a whiteboard, Leon.
But I guess, look, I don't want to speak out of school, and I know that if I get into this too deeply, one of my old economics professors is going to ring me and slap me upside my head. But I just think it's like there's certain models, right? Like there's so maybe just one for people to Google if they want, right? Is you look up the Robert Solow production function, okay, and what that is a legitimate, algebraic formula that shows you how an economy works. And what the actual thing that really impacts it the most is productivity, right? So the basic essence of it is that it's about, productivity, physical capital, and labor equal output, right? That those are your four kind of main categories. And so many people just are going, well, it's all about the output, right? That's how you increase GDP. And GDP is measured per capita, right? So it's kind of like, all right, well, how do we just get those outputs to increase? And you think, well, it's just by increasing the inputs. But the truth is, when you actually look at the productivity section, right, that's the thing that moves the needle the most, right? Like when people are innovating, when people are more creative, right? Like those actually give you a better, sometimes even disproportionate ratio. And when you actually think about it culturally, like this is where I'm getting way out of economics now and just into like organizational stuff. when do you think people are at their most innovative and at their most creative, right? It's when they're usually at their happiest, right? It's when they're not stressed, right? And if you create a really safe workspace for people where they feel seen, where they feel heard, where they feel connected, you know, they don't feel like there's any chance of toxicity or discrimination, you are going to see some of the most unbelievable ideas, you know, discussed and executed on. And when that level of productivity goes through the roof, suddenly your ratios of like physical capital to labor to output suddenly start to look really, really different. You know, they're not so conventional anymore. So yeah, this is like pretty out there stuff, I know. But
no, I love it. And I suppose I can think of it like this, like altruism is an input and then good things are going to flow from there.
Totally. And then another one I'd point people towards is a really, really great book called Coopetition. It's by a guy named Brandenburger. It's an amazing economics book, but it just really, in a really compelling way, shows that, you know, business doesn't need to be about a zero-sum game, right? It's like you need to be able to rethink the whole dynamic, and you need to be able to think about the market. He's got this concept called a value net, right, where you basically have suppliers, you know, your business and your customers, and you include staff as suppliers, right, because they're supplying their time to you. And what's really cool, though, is you think about outside of that, on either side of that value net, he calls it, you've got these things called competitors, and then you've got complementers. Okay, and so competitors, he says, is anyone who you put their product next to yours and it detracts the value of both. But a complementer is you put your product next to each other and it increases the value of both. And so suddenly you think about your business from that perspective of like, who are the actual complementers, you know, in my industry? Who are the complementers like in my network? And it just changes the whole way that you kind of think about collaboration. And so, yeah, that book's an awesome one in terms of like, you know, thinking about some of those very complicated principles.
Yeah, I love it. Well, we'll put a link to that in the show notes. And that also makes me want to tell you and the audience about Samison 2.0, which is a restaurant down in Torquay. Two hats, lovely fine dining restaurant, but it is also zero waste, and all the profits go to a local food rescue and sharing organisation called Feed Me Bellarine. So the restaurant's in Torquay, so looking after that local community. So Samison is one of 10 restaurants around the world that have been highlighted by Alexander the Guest, a YouTuber who's also got an Instagram account, and everyone should get on to this Instagram post and vote for Samison to be named like the next restaurant that this guy is going to visit. I think it's just shining a light on a restaurant that's doing things completely differently, is looking after the community and shining a light on a massive issue in the community, which is food insecurity. So I just love the big picture thinking that's part of a business like that. You should check it out, Leon. I think it would really resonate with you.
I'm more than happy to jump on the motorbike one day and ride out and have a look. I'll definitely do it. But I think why I think that stuff resonates so much is it's not just intuitive anymore. You know, like there's some pretty amazing studies that have come out now, market research wise, where they look at categories like, like generationally, right? So you look at like millennials and you look at some of that stuff, and you kind of can't just discount that anymore, because, you know, this new generation is like over 18% of the population, right? Like in the next 3-4 years, it's going to be like $1 trillion economy. And it's also really, really clear what that segment want. And at the core of so much of it is impact, right? It's not only a thing where it's like, oh, if you're doing something in your business and it's got some element of positive impact, that's kind of nice. Moving forward, that stuff's essential, you know? And it's like, I love that. Like, that's what I meant before about how I feel like there's just this natural gravity towards these things happening. You know, like I've personally always worked with, you know, I've been really fortunate to be able to always work with founders and brands that prioritize that stuff. But, you know, we were always the odd ones out, you know, and now it's like more common than ever. And I just think that's a really, really good thing.
I love that. Well, Leon, you mentioned that it's all about, you know, having the business humming so that you can enjoy yourself outside of work. What do you love to get up to?
Well, I mentioned the motorbike, and everyone around me, gives me a lot of stick for it because I never stop talking about them. But last time we talked, actually, or one of the times we talked, I was telling you about my son who is a skateboarder, and that has just been, this last year of our lives has been like unbelievable. Like he's just gone to this incredible level. Like he won like a silver medal in the Moomba competition, and he's just like. So I'm literally like outside of all my working hours, I'm probably putting in 15 to 20 hours at the skate park with him, where I'm just, what my main job is? I'm just like managing his Instagram and videoing him doing all these tricks. But it's been awesome. Like I was actually thinking about it just last night, just how much of a blessing it is to be in a community like that, because it's all these things we were just talking about with business, right? Like just super diverse, super inclusive, everybody's just there to support each other, and you're getting exercise, it's mentally regulating, there's something quite spiritual about it. And that's, if you ever want to find me and I'm not at work, I'll probably just be down at Riverslide in the city, so come and say good day.
I will look out for you as I walk past with my dog, not skate past. But no, that sounds really great. Leon, I think one of the other topics we've talked about before is AI, and maybe we could wrap this conversation up with some of your insights onto where that's going. It's at a rapid pace. I'm seeing all kinds of things, AI, phone answering for restaurants, taking orders. But what are you seeing?
So I'll go really niche, right? Because I just think in terms of like what's happening in the market and what should I be adopting, it, like ironically, you should just be using AI to tell you that, right? Like if you are leveraging it, right? Like I'm not going to be able to add more value than that, but maybe I can just share a little hack that I use it for. Because I think when we talked last time, I was saying how I was using it a while back was like helping with some of the identity statements, right? Just by like punching in all your reviews and stuff like that and trying to identify themes, and still do that. Such a good process. But one of the things that I've been using that is really, really good is thinking about NotebookLM as a real strategic partner, right? As a sounding board, as almost like a consultant, right? That's sitting in your laptop, because if you set it up in a certain way, like this is my sort of hot tip, okay, is that you got to get a platform that is you can't do it on ChatGPT. You got to use NotebookLM because that's an AI source that's grounded. So what that means is it's not going to cast the net far and wide. It's only going to stick to the parameters you set the notebook up for. So it reduces hallucination. But the point of it is, right, is whatever you dump into that notebook, it becomes like this super brain for that topic, right? So here's the hack, right? What you should do is take everything that's going on in your business, okay, and dump it in there, right? I'm talking like all your onboarding material, your induction stuff, like just get all that in there, because it's 25 million words, right? Like you'll never max it out. But on top of that, get all of your like meeting notes, right? Like your one-on-ones, your team meetings, your financial reports, your daily reports, your conflict logs, like just go and just dump everything in there, like pump it in. And then you can ask the notebook questions like, what should we be thinking about that we're not thinking about right now? And what it spits back at you is wild. And the other cool function of that is on NotebookLM in particular, you've got the audio overview. Are you across that? So
I'm not across any of this. I'm like, right. I've got a list on a piece of paper with my to-do. So my business is pretty simple maybe, but anyway, I'm sure I could be doing a lot better.
Nah, fair. But the thing I was just going to finish off with is like there's a really cool feature on NotebookLM called the audio overview. So whatever you pump into the notebook, it's pretty much click 2 buttons and it'll produce a podcast for you, a fully AI podcast that, if you know, but if you didn't, you could actually listen to it and go, are these real people? Like, what the hell? And what you do is you can set these parameters to say, hey, I want to create a people and culture update for my organization and I want to send it out company-wide. And it'll literally, within, 15 minutes, it'll generate like a 10-minute podcast that you can literally send out to your entire organization, and it'll filter out all the appropriate information for that purpose because you've put everything in there. And that, to me, definitely beats like a rushed kind of monthly newsletter that like no one ends up reading anyway. So I think that's my big hack. Get onto NotebookLM and use it in that capacity. It's life-changing.
Oh, wow. I feel like I should just retire the podcast and just get AI to do it. But
we're not far off it. Hey.
Well, hopefully we are far enough away that we'll be able to get you back on Dirty Linen another time, Leon, and we still won't have quite been replaced. But thank you so much for spending time with us today. Always so good to catch up, and all the best with PAX. I think it's definitely a positive for the industry, and really appreciate all you're throwing at it.
Thanks, Dani. Thanks for having me on to let me talk about it.
This is Dirty Linen, and I'm Dani Valent. We air the issues that the hospitality industry finds hard to talk about, hearing from different people with unique perspectives. We want to hear from you as well. If you have something that needs to be said about a topic, get in touch so we can include your perspective. Contact us at dirtylinen@deepintheweeds.com.au or hit us up on Insta at Dirty Linen Podcast. We can't wait to hear from you.
This is a Deep in the Weeds production.